Hello and welcome to a Monday edition of the Managing Madrid Podcast. I'm your host, Kiyan Sobhani, joined today by Lucas Navarrete. We are 2 days removed from Real Madrid drawing 1-1 away to Betis at the Benito Villamarin, and 1 day removed from Girona going into Barcelona, beating them for the first time, and doing it in quite heroic fashion. And Ewan McTeer tweeted this, Lucas, after the game. He's like, I've never seen so many Madridistas celebrate being knocked off the top of the table. I'm like, hey, look, man. The reality is, I think if you gauge the temperature of the Real Madrid fan base, a lot collectively feel that Girona may not be able to sustain what they're doing. And Barca may be more real title challengers when we're talking about April, May, etc. Whether that's true or not, I'm not entirely sure. I don't want to say anything too soon. Girona have been very impressive. Hats off to them, and hats off to them if they continue to sustain this. But it was nice to see the Barca meltdown last night. Lucas, how was your weekend, man? What's going on?
It was good. Things for Hanmi as always, Kiyan. It was strange, definitely. Seeing I expected definitely Real Madrid to drop points and lose points, a bit of their caution over Barca after the draw in Sevilla. Turns out that Real Madrid increased their lead after Barcelona's loss against Girona at home. So yeah, just to connect a little bit on what you just said, I don't expect Girona to sustain this, although I didn't expect Leicester to sustain their run in the Premier League years ago, and they did, and ended up winning the league. So, but I think this will be different this time. I don't think Girona are a real threat to the title. So it was good, obviously, to see their lead increase over Barca.
Well, a couple of things from that game, and we can start there. We might as well start reverse chronological order. I think to tie this into why are we talking about that game on this podcast? First of all, because it affects our title race chances. Second of all, Miguel Gutierrez, who we could possibly bring back one day, had a killer game. Third of all, because we don't like Barcelona. So, stating the obvious here, everyone says, why are you so obsessed with Barcelona? It's like, well, if you're a Madridista, you kind of are obsessed with them losing. And if you're a Barcelona fan, you kind of are obsessed with Real Madrid losing. And if you deny it, you're just lying to yourself. So to tie it into this discussion, it was I think it's a good thing for Real Madrid in some ways to see them respond in this way. But when you see what they say after the game, when you see Xavi saying, this is a team under construction, or we could have drawn that game if Lewandowski had scored. It was almost 3-3. They never actually talk about all the problems. They never talk about the fact actually, if Savio wasn't really selfish, it would have been 4-1 on a breakaway because he just tried to score instead of laying it out for a tap-in. They didn't talk about the fact that their defense was some of the worst defending I've seen by a big club especially, in a long time. So that aside, let's talk about Miguel, because I think that is an interesting talking point. He was fantastic last night. He's been great all season. Last night stood out because it's a big game on the calendar. Girona have never won there away to Barcelona. And or I think for that matter, I don't think they've ever beaten them at home either, right?
Don't think so.
So I'm just curious because you see a lot of train of thought of maybe he's the one we should have brought back. And and it's kind of difficult to say either way. I was always high on Miguel, but I was always high on Fran Garcia too. I don't want to pin them against each other, and I think Fran Garcia was great with Rayo as well. And sometimes when this even goes back as far as Alvaro Odriozola, who was phenomenal at Real Sociedad as a kid, comes over and there's certain expectations of him, and lo and behold, it's a little bit different playing at this club than it is playing great, at a different club. So it doesn't mean that these guys are bad players, but of course, at Real Madrid, there's a certain elite level status that we're discussing here. So, it's hard to say what Miguel would have looked like at Real Madrid, but we have seen a small sample size of Miguel at Real Madrid under Zidane. And in those limited cameos, and I'm going way back into my deep vault of memories, very, very interesting player offensively. His vision on the ball, the kind of the final pass that he saw in certain situations was very impressive. Defensively, he had to improve. And I'm just kind of just throwing it back at you. Like, what are your thoughts on this? Do you think this is a player that you can, obviously after a game like this, it just goes on the radar, right? You know, you start to see like, there's article Mario Cortajano wrote about, like, you know, the I think he discussed like what has to happen for him. I mean, it's very similar to Fran Garcia, I think, in the sense that if another team comes in and tries to buy it and trigger it, it gets triggered to us and say, okay, well, we can look at this first and we can possibly bring him back. And if that happens as early as January, then it could be that situation again. I'm not sure. But what are your thoughts on all this? Miguel, Fran Garcia, Mendy, transfers, Girona, whatever.
I guess it depends a lot on the Alphonso Davies situation, how Real Madrid are predicting that particular transfer rumor to go down. If Davies is not expected to sign for Madrid next summer, I think that Miguel has a good chance of receiving some offers from bigger clubs than Girona, so Real Madrid would be forced to make a decision there. And the club might feel that, considering that Mendy is not expected to sign an extension and that his contract expires in 2025, I think that maybe Real Madrid would be forced to kind of trigger the same option they had on Miguel and bring him back, only to see what they have here and made another decision about both Miguel and Fran Garcia the next year if Davies is a realistic option. So it'll be interesting. I think it'll be something to monitor. If I were Real Madrid, I would probably try to find a new club for Mendy and then trigger that option on Miguel Gutierrez for a year. See what you have there on about those two players. See who rises to the top and who might not be ready to be a Real Madrid player in the long term, and then possibly bring Alphonso Davies after that if that's possible. But if Alphonso Davies is attainable next summer, I don't think Real Madrid would bring Miguel back unless both Fran Garcia and Mendy walk, which is a little bit premature and difficult to see and difficult to expect, if I'm being honest. I don't see that happening either.
Yeah, the dominoes that would have to fall for that are a little bit too much. And again, you mentioned the Alphonso Davies piece of the club. See him as a really good market opportunity too, contingent on the Bayern renewal, which has not happened yet under the new Bayern regime, which is obviously different than the one Alphonso Davies appreciated greatly when he first signed for Bayern Munich. So contingent on what happens there. Miguel kind of falls in this pool of players, of market opportunities that the club is just an arm's reach away from if needed. You know, you kind of look at how the roster is built now, apart from Jude Bellingham, which is like, okay, we got to get this guy. You know, you kind of look at the fact that Brahim came back, Rudiger was signed on a free. Then you have Endrick, who falls in the category of young players we scouted who are pretty expensive now, but could be astronomically more expensive down the road. And so that's an investment we take. You kind of look at all these things, how they're unfolding. You can kind of see, Lucas, and you and I have discussed this quite a bit. Is it just a more simple summer next summer? You know, with you kind of just bring players back that are close to you, rather than killing yourself trying to get one or two guys who, again, like you and I have discussed this, it's like you get the alphas, and after that, you're not really interested in like the Osimhens because of their price tag, or, you know, the Harry Kanes even, who is arguably the best striker in the world right now. Then you're like, okay, well, we'll look at these market opportunities right now because Juni Calafat has basically been almost bang on everything he's done, apart from a couple who haven't worked out. I don't know. I mean, I even see Kubo in that category too, of like the club might look at. Kubo's a little bit different in the sense that, you know, that is actually really dependent on Arda Güler as well and how he does. But this could be...
Yeah, there are...
Yeah, it just like it could be maybe morphing into like I suppose a summer of maybe simplifying it a little bit with what they do. I don't know.
Yeah, but simplifying it would be missing on, or like refusing to get your hands on a few players who would be good opportunities. You mentioned Kubo. Miguel Gutierrez is another obvious example. I see him leaving Girona for quite a reasonable and cheap price to join another club when Real Madrid are not deep at the left back spot. So Miguel Gutierrez, Kubo, maybe even Nico Williams, who has just signed an extension and seems to be on Real Madrid's radar. So those few market opportunities will likely be there, and even if Real Madrid want to stay put and like keep it simple, not signing one of those market opportunities will be seen as a strange and head scratching decision, maybe, because I mean, again, Kubo would be attainable for somewhere in the 10-20 range, I guess. Miguel Gutierrez could be attained for something similar like that, and players like that at that price don't grow on trees. So it's not like Real Madrid cannot sign all of them and have a 25 player squad, because the roles will not be defined, and then obviously it would be tough for whoever the coach is to find minutes for each and every one of those young players. But again, finding a proper left back for a reasonable price like the one Miguel will likely have is a good opportunity for a club like Real Madrid, who are, to be quite honest with you, quite desperate to find a reasonable left back. Let's not forget that when Camavinga is back from his injury, he might as well be starting in that spot, and that's definitely not ideal. And it will not be ideal whenever Kroos and Modric walk away from the club, which seems to be happening soon. So Real Madrid will have some tough decisions to make regarding these young players we're mentioning.
What do you think the trust level is for Fran Garcia right now? If tomorrow we had a Champions League semifinal against Manchester City and Mendy and Camavinga were both injured, would Fran Garcia play, or would Carlo put Nacho there? I think he'd put Nacho.
I think so. I think so too.
Or Alaba,
or even Alaba. Yeah, whoever. Yeah. Whoever. I think so too. Yeah. I think he's been very discouraged by what he's seen from Fran Garcia in the composure department, especially. I think he's been good, but he's been mistake prone way too often. I think he's made too many mistakes for a club like Real Madrid, and those mistakes cost you dearly in the big stage. So I don't know. Definitely, the trust in Fran Garcia from the coaching staff is definitely at an all-time low, in my opinion. In terms of the board, I don't know. I don't know if the board sees it differently. I don't know if the board maybe has a little bit more faith in Fran Garcia as a project. And that would mean that maybe the club would be more comfortable not getting their hands on Miguel, and not as desperate about maybe signing Alphonso Davies next summer. It will be interesting to know that. If I were to be honest, I think that the trust and the faith is not very high about Fran Garcia at the moment. I think his first half of the season has been disappointing and discouraging, and unless he proves the club otherwise, unless he proves otherwise and proves himself a little bit during the minutes he gets over the upcoming months, because I think he's going to play, it'll be tough for Real Madrid not to sign someone for that left back spot next summer.
I think there may be trust in him as a long-term project, but I think there is lack of short-term trust right now. And the problem with that is always, when do you have time to develop these players and make them and let them play through mistakes when the title race is tight and the Champions League experiments are long gone. Can you hear me okay? I'm getting some static. Is it okay?
Yeah. That's fine. Yeah, that's fine.
We have a few minutes left. What do you want to talk about? Do you want to talk about the Betis game?
Yeah, let's do it. I thought that the game was okay most of the time, and Real Madrid performed well. Let's not forget that Betis are a strong team at home, and they are also a strong team, period. Like, they are fighting to maybe play European football next year. So they are. I mean, winning the 3 points against Betis is not a given, especially in Sevilla. So all that aside, I thought that the performance was decent. But I didn't like how the team responded to Betis equalizer. It's always tough to respond with composure and with intensity after conceding an equalizer away from the Bernabeu. Granted, because obviously the home fans are always behind their team, and they're always making sure that the team kind of goes after the game winning goal. So it's always tough for a team to respond well after that. But I thought that I was quite a bit disappointed by what Real Madrid did after conceding that equalizer in the second half a little bit.
I think part of that response had to do with their team just looked so tired, like just so out of gas. And I mentioned it to Matt after the game, in particular to arguably our two best players of the season, Bellingham and Fede Valverde. They just look so tired, and think about how much ground they have to cover in the absence. And I think I've seen people ask, why are we tired when we had a 1 week rest? We're like, well, because first of all, Bellingham wasn't even training every day because he was on his own thing, trying to stay healthy and recover and make sure he doesn't have too much strain on his shoulders. And the second thing was, well, these players have to play so many minutes because the team is missing half their squad. So there isn't much opportunity to rest these guys either. I know Fede has been playing incessantly, basically. He's always been one guy where Carlo has looked at maybe resting after the international breaks, but he hasn't been afforded that luxury either. And so he's covering even more ground, playing in the role he is in double pivot. So it's tough. I know we got to go in 4 minutes, so I just wanted to float this to you. Did you see Endrick's interview in The Guardian yesterday?
No.
So it was pretty cool. I mean, it was more of the background, and his father was talking about, the choices they had to make when, which club to sign for and stuff. And there's a story about how close he was to signing for Chelsea. And the deal was basically done. And his father was saying that, I'm not a huge fan of going to London because it's cold. But for whatever weird reason, Endrick loves cold. He loves playing in the rain. So London was actually appealing to him. They went to the Chelsea training ground. They saw a game there. He met the players who were playing for Chelsea at the time, the Brazilians, Jorginho, Thiago Silva. I can't remember who else was there. And it was done. And then Abramovich, when they thought the deal was done, backs out of the deal because the 50 million that they were going to pay for him would have inflated the market, and they couldn't really justify that they'd pay this much for a player who wouldn't arrive for another 2 years. And then shortly after, Real Madrid took that gamble. And I just kind of wonder, well, now, I guess now I'm answering my own question. I was going to say, I wonder if Abramovich looks at, it now and he's well, maybe I should have done it, seeing what he did. But Abramovich is gone, so I guess he doesn't even give a shit anymore. So I kind of answered my question. But yeah, I just thought it was interesting. It was a very cool kind of perspective and what if, and that it was almost done.
Yeah, looking forward to seeing what we have in store with Endrick. It'll be interesting to see how rapidly he adapts to Spanish football. We've talked about him for a while now. I expect some struggles, some growing pains for him naturally, but it'll be interesting to see what he has. But I encourage everyone to stay and be patient with Endrick. I don't think he'll light the world, set the world on fire as soon as he arrives. I think he'll definitely need some time.
The funny thing is that I think the new Chelsea board would have signed him, because they had no limits on spending.
Maybe, yeah.
Now they want to dip back in the market for 3 more players, apparently, a midfielder, a striker, a defender in the winter market. And you think back to all this thing they were pitching. They were we spend $1 billion now, so we don't have to spend for the next X amount of years. And I'm no, you got they spent so much money on the wrong set of players without a sporting vision and just throwing money. I don't know, man. If I was a Chelsea,
the last 2-3 years have been ridiculous with all the attackers and all that. Yeah.
And did they actually end up with any elite players? I mean, Enzo is
Not
probably
really.
the only one that.
They expected Mudryk and all those to be really really great, but yeah, not so
Crazy.
great at least not so far. Yeah,
Just an absolute disaster, a shit show of how to run a football team. Just insane.
yeah.
Whew. Wow. All right. Well,
Just real quick, Kiyan, just
yeah.
one extra minute, real quick
Yeah.
on the Betis game. I thought that Lucas and Ceballos were borderline unplayable in that game. Very discouraged by what we saw. Obviously, with Ceballos, you have to temper your expectations a little bit because he's coming off 2 serious injuries. Basically, missed the entirety of the preseason and then missed pretty much 2 or another extra month after that. So with Ceballos, I'm a bit more less concerned, if you will. I think he'll be better as the time progresses. With Lucas Vazquez, I think it's reasonable to be like very concerned in terms of like Real Madrid have an injury-prone right back who has been done great so far, and that's Carvajal. But the situation will be desperate whenever he misses time. I think Lucas Vazquez was terrible in Sevilla, and the situation will be very desperate when Carvajal misses time. With Ceballos, the problem with Ceballos is that he's the first man of the bench right now. So it's not like Real Madrid have a lot of time to wait for him and kind of let him regain some confidence and some momentum back after all that time he's missed. He's kind of needed right now because Real Madrid are so thin in the midfield line. So although I'm not concerned because I think that the rustiness was expected, I think that timing is not great for him in that regard. Hopefully he'll get the chance to start in Berlin. I think it's pretty much a lock that he will start in that game, so that he increases his confidence there, and hopefully he can keep it up there with Lucas, keep it up from there. With Lucas Vazquez, I think the situation is tougher. Don't know what you think.
I agree on. So Vazquez was brutal, and I like our left back situation is like a gold mine compared to our right back situation. Really, like I wish Miguel was a right back. Like that would have been cool.
Definitely.
That would have solved some of these issues or these conversations, these barriers or whatever. Right back market is it's not great either, unless maybe Xabi Alonso brings Frimpong with him, but I don't even know if he's coming anyway. The Ceballos thing, like he was really bad against Napoli, and then the Betis game, one of his first touches was that when he gave the ball away, but he got bailed out by a foul. I thought he got a little bit better towards the end of the game where he started actually fighting and making better decisions. But I'm kind of not worried about Ceballos.
No, I'm not either.
Yeah, I think he'll be okay. I think he's a really good player, and I believe in him. I also think I agree with Matt on this because he quote tweeted someone else who was complaining about the Ceballos contract, and he's like, "Come on, man, he earned the contract. They can't like." So I agree with him on that too. I think he'll be okay, but the right back situation worries me. Even like we got the ideal scenario, Carvajal is playing really good this year, but even then, what's our plan B when he inevitably gets injured? It's this, and that's kind of...
Or needs rest, even. Like, I don't trust Lucas Vazquez getting the job done whenever Carvajal is healthy and just needs some rest and needs some rotation in order to stay fresh. I mean, this is some games in the Copa del Rey. We're talking about maybe some manageable Liga games ahead of a crucial Champions League match that maybe Carvajal will need some rest in order to stay fresh for those, right? So, I just don't trust Lucas Vazquez to get the job done in that regard, so...
But the thing is, like, we've seen Vazquez fill in with really good minutes before. So, like, if he can't come in for a few games for 2-3 weeks and help us, I mean, look, like, next week we got Villarreal. So he's going to go up against the Baena-Pedraza left-wing combo. So let's see how he does there. We need much better from him than we got in that Betis game. All right, Lucas, we're going to wrap it up here. For our listeners' sake, Union Berlin post-game show will be over on patreon.com/Managing Madrid, or you can click the YouTube memberships tab. You can also get access to it there. Live call only for members. Thursday mailbag with Lucas only for members. So the next 3 shows are only for members. So make sure you're a patron over on patreon.com/Managing Madrid, or click the YouTube memberships tab. And we're having some difficulty with Apple Podcasts right now. If you're listening to this, you don't even know that there's a problem because it's working fine on Spotify and YouTube, but we're hoping to get the Apple thing sorted out very soon. All right, Lucas, good chatting. Talk soon.
Yes, sir, Kiyan.
Peace
Take
out.
care.